Order. We start with questions. Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, Adam Jogee.
Question 1, Mr. Speaker.
Secretary of State.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I will ask questions 1, 4, 8, 9 and 14 together. Economic growth is the priority for this government, and our industrial strategy is central to achieving it. Last week, I co-hosted a roundtable with the Minister for the Economy, Kiva Archibald, and business organisations to discuss how we can work together to ensure that the industrial strategy benefits Northern Ireland.
Adam Jogee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Northern Ireland, like Newcastle-under-Lyme, has a very proud industrial heritage. So, can the Secretary of State expand on his answer and give us a flavour of the specific discussions he's had with industry, higher education institutions and the executive on making sure that Northern Ireland is right alongside Newcastle-under-Lyme at the heart of the government's new industrial strategy?
Secretary of State.
Well, Northern Ireland does indeed have a great industrial heritage. An example of that is, of course, Titanic Studios, which was the paint shed for Harlow and Wolff and now hosts a lot of filmmaking in Northern Ireland. And another example of that is the revival of Harland and Wolff, which, thanks to the takeover by Navantia, is going to be building the 3 new fleet solid support ships for the Navy. Those are 2 really good examples of Northern Ireland's strength.
Under Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Secretary of State agree with me that the UK industrial strategy is of deep importance to residents in Northern Ireland, as it is in Erewash, where we are currently in the process of redeveloping New Stanton Park to form a new industrial future from the rubble of our famous former ironworks?
Secretary of State.
Well, I do indeed, and I wish my honourable friend every success with the new Stanton Park development. But I have to say that the round table that I co-chaired last week, we had representatives from manufacturing, from cyber, from small businesses, from alchemy and the chambers in Derry, Londonderry and Causeway Coast. And those businesses can see great opportunities resulting from this strategy for the people and the businesses of Northern Ireland.
Benn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Secretary of State for his answer. A core objective of the government's modern industrial strategy is to unleash the full potential of our cities and regions, which is as true in Northern Ireland as it is in my constituency of Harlow. So does the Secretary of State agree with me that Northern Ireland's 4 city growth deals, which the government committed to at the budget, can play a vital role in this?
Secretary of State.
Well, I wish Harlow every success as well. The city and growth deals are really important to the economic future of Northern Ireland. The government is investing together with the executive, private sector partners and businesses a very considerable amount of money, and among the projects that those city and growth deals will support are those relating to digital innovation, decarbonisation and digital health, yet another example of the great strength of the Ireland economy.
If we want to boost productivity, drive clean, green power and build a resilient economy across the UK, collaboration is going to be essential. So can the Secretary of State set out what political engagement he's had with business leaders and other politicians on working together to deliver the best for Northern Ireland and the United Kingdom?
Well, I'm grateful to my honourable friend for that question. Last Thursday, I visited Foyle Port, and Foyle Port has an innovation park, and there is going to be built there a new data centre which will be able to tap into the renewable energy that is available alongside it. Now, that is a really good example of the port thinking about its economic future, how we're going to get new businesses in, drawing on the great strength that Northern Ireland has in renewable energy, and I hope we see more such developments.
Shannon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm just, you were looking at the other Jim, you know. Can I thank the Secretary of State very much for...
Jim, you're in standby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituents in Falkirk saw firsthand the failure of governments to collaborate in the previous Parliament. What engagement has he had with political business leaders and sector leaders such as those in bus manufacturing to work together to deliver the best for Northern Ireland?
Well, my honourable friend gives me the chance to talk about the great success of Wrightbus in Ballymena, which has won a huge new order from Go Ahead, is making electric and hydrogen buses of the future. They're taking on more staff, and I would encourage anyone who is thinking around the United Kingdom of buying buses for their fleet to look and see what is available at Wrightbus.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank the Secretary of State for for his answers. Can the Secretary of State further outline what representation he has had with Cabinet colleagues to ensure that the UK industrial strategy pays more than lip service to the position of Northern Ireland, when we understand that our manufacturing industry, as seen in aerospace, shipbuilding and defence industry, which has a global reputation as being top class? And how will the Secretary of State advocate for our own government to invest in these sectors even further and even better? Thank you so much.
Well, I have already pointed out to the House examples of that investment. In relation to Harlow and Wolff, I would add the order that's going to Thales to make more missiles for Ukraine, which will create an additional 200 jobs. Northern Ireland, as I think the answers I've given already demonstrate, has enormous strengths, and the task of the strategy and all of us is to build on them.
Alex Easton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Secretary of State give safeguards on the benefits of UK industry strategy, such as economic growth, innovation, research and development, against the adverse effects from the Windsor Framework?
Well, the Windsor Framework is a necessity arising from our departure from the European Union, because you've got two trading entities with different rules and an open border. And some arrangement had to be put in place in order to manage that. But the goods are continuing to flow both ways across the Irish Sea. And I would point out to the honourable gentleman that the growth rate in Northern Ireland is higher than the UK as a whole. It also has the lowest unemployment in the UK.
Ben Swan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Sorry, Mr. Speaker. Apologies. That's you not being followed.
It's the last call for a while.
I'll write to you later, sir. Mr. Speaker, can I ask the Secretary of State, in regards to the international trade that the member of North Down just mentioned, can I ask him what assessment has been made in regards to the UK industrial strategy, actually, and the impact of US tariffs that may come on Northern Ireland goods manufactured?
Well, we will discover more later on today about the decision that we're told the US administration is about to make. Tariffs are not good for any country. They're not good for the global trading system. But we will have to see what the consequences are. Any tariffs that the United States of America puts on the United Kingdom will be felt equally in Northern Ireland and in Great Britain, but we will not hesitate to take the action that is necessary to respond, but we're not going to take snap decisions, because we are also trying to negotiate an economic agreement with the United States of America.
Jim Allister.
Industrial strategy would be very welcome, but isn't the reality that any assistance under an industrial strategy in Northern Ireland would be subject to EU state aid rules? Any raw materials to industry in Northern Ireland come from GB would have to pass through the international EU customs border, and many goods would have to be made to EU, not UK standards. Therefore, unless or until we get rid of those hindrances, how do we liberate such a strategy?
Well, as I pointed out in answer to the previous question, the Windsor Framework that was negotiated by the previous government, a huge improvement on the Northern Ireland Protocol, is the only available means of managing the challenge: two systems, two different sets of rules, open border. And not all members of the House may want to recognise that fact, but it is a fact, and we have to deal with it.
The Secretary of State will be aware that over the last couple of decades, investment from US companies in Northern Ireland has been very important for economic growth and cementing the peace process. As we all wait the announcement from the President of the United States later today, will the Secretary of State give some thought to supporting businesses that could be very detrimentally affected by any potential tariffs in Northern Ireland?
Well, we are going to have to wait and see what the US administration decides. And as I've already indicated, the government will take the steps that are necessary in the national interest. But we are seeking to negotiate an agreement. And that work is continuing, notwithstanding what is announced later today.
Shadow Secretary of State Alex Back.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the House has heard, later today we are expecting Washington to announce the biggest changes to its tariff regime in a generation. This may cause huge disruption to industry and business throughout the United Kingdom, and that disruption may be particularly felt in Northern Ireland. What guidance has the government provided to businesses in Northern Ireland to help them prepare for different scenarios?
Well, we don't yet know what, apart from the tariff on cars and the tariff on steel and aluminium, what else the US administration may announce later today. But the effects of any tariffs, if they are imposed, will be felt equally in Northern Ireland and across the rest of the United Kingdom. We will have to deal with the consequences when we know what the US administration has decided.
Alex Burkhardt.
Well, I'm afraid, Mr. Speaker, that reveals that the government hasn't provided business with any information to help it prepare for the different scenarios that may be emerging. Now, as the Secretary of State will be aware, in some scenarios, Northern Ireland, because of its unique arrangements, may be particularly disadvantaged in a trade war. If that happens, will the Secretary of State confirm to the House that the government will be prepared to use Article 16 of the Windsor Framework to take unilateral safeguarding measures to protect businesses in GB and Northern Ireland?
Well, in respect of tariffs that affect the whole of the United Kingdom, as I've already said to the honourable gentleman, we'll have to see what they are and take the appropriate action in response. If the EU retaliates, then there is an issue in respect of Northern Ireland, as he will be well aware, but there is the tariff reimbursement scheme, which he will be aware of, and that means that provided those businesses can demonstrate that the goods they have bought from the United States of America are not leaving the United Kingdom, then they can get that tariff reimbursed.
Look back.
Question 2, Mr. Speaker.
Secretary of State.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I will answer questions 2 and 10 together. The government's commitment to increase defence expenditure to 2.5% of GDP from April 2027 will provide an opportunity for defence companies in Northern Ireland to secure investment and create jobs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Teesside has strong and enduring ties with Northern Ireland, and of course we remember the contribution that the late Mo Mowlam made and the legacy she left, but economically as well. Does my right honourable friend agree that the government's historic uplift in defence spending can deepen those ties and ensure jobs and growth across the UK?
I do indeed agree with my honourable friend, because this is an opportunity for UK defence businesses, including in Northern Ireland, to take advantage of the increased defence expenditure. I've already indicated to the House 2 examples in Tarleys and Harlow Wolf where the government is investing in Northern Ireland already.
Donna Baxter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The UK defence industry supports hundreds of thousands of good jobs and represents UK manufacturing at its best. Can the Secretary of State outline what the government is doing to support the defence sector in Scotland and in Northern Ireland?
Well, the most important thing we're doing, Mr. Speaker, is to increase defence expenditure, which will provide the opportunities I referred to a moment ago. I would also very much welcome the step that the Ministry of Defence has taken to announce a new hub for small and medium-sized enterprises so they can have better access to the defence supply chain, and the MOD has also committed to set by July this year a target for spending on SMEs.
Roberts.
Mr. Speaker, the Secretary of State may recall that 2 years ago I launched a report that highlighted Northern Ireland receives 1/5 of the UK average spend in relation to defence, and that incorporates the commitment for Harlow Wolf, which I worked on and greatly welcome. I welcome the announcement of £1.6 billion of a contract for Talis, but does he accept that the last government committed to a thorough and thoughtful publication of how they would support continued growth within the Northern Ireland defence sector, and will he commit similarly to do so?
Well, I'm grateful to the right honourable gentleman for his question. The Ministry of Defence have agreed to deliver precisely the safeguarding the Union commitment through their defence industrial strategy, which is going to look at how the UK's defence technological and industrial base can contribute to the government's growth mission, including in Northern Ireland.
Gavin Robinson.
Mr. Speaker, to the Secretary of State for that response. Today, this afternoon, this House of Commons will recognise 125 years of the Irish Guards as a British regiment, and so when we consider the capacity to arm those to defend us, should we not also continue our resolve to defend those who stand up for the values of this nation. In terms of legacy, will the Secretary of State commit to defend those who defended us?
Secretary of State.
I certainly will. And those who served in Operation Banner were protecting the people of Northern Ireland and standing up for the values of our country. And we've discussed that a great deal recently, and since I last had the opportunity to address the House, he will have seen the decision that the Ministry of Defence has taken to judicially review the Clonaux inquest verdict, a decision that I support.
Lyndon.
Over eager, Mr. Speaker. Number 3, please.
Minister.
Great British Energy will operate across the whole of the United Kingdom, helping to reduce our reliance on imported gas and bring down energy bills. UK ministers and GB Energy will work with the Northern Ireland Department of the Economy to explore opportunities to increase clean energy deployment by 2030, starting with £1.6 million of funding to the Executive for sustainable energy.
Very Lyndon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Abandoning the 2050 net zero target shows the Tory leader has learned nothing from her party's historic. Does the Minister agree with me that Northern Ireland has a huge amount to gain from this Labour government working together with the Northern Ireland Executive on the transition to clean power, and can she update us on any recent discussions she's had with the Executive?
Minister.
The Conservatives' energy policy for the last 14 years and now fails to bring down bills, still relying on expensive oil and gas, fails to invest in green jobs and fails future generations on climate change. But this government is investing in the new technologies we need. 2 weeks ago, I was delighted to join the UK Minister for Energy Security and Net Zero at Ulster University to see their cutting-edge renewable energy and solar panel development and the benefits that the clean energy transition can bring to Northern Ireland, and I'm also working with the Executive on this.
Samuel Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In pursuit of the unrealistic and costly net zero policies of this government, the government has committed billions of pounds to carbon capture, has guaranteed long-term prices to renewable energy sources, which has added to consumer bills, and set up GB Energy, a costly quango. One project which is likely to apply to GB Energy is the massive wind farm which is being proposed off the coast of Northern Ireland, adjacent to the World Heritage Site of the Giant's Causeway, a major tourist attraction in Northern Ireland. Will the Minister commit to ensuring that GB Energy does not support a project which would have a detrimental effect on our tourist industry?
Minister.
Where wind farms are positioned will be subject to the normal planning processes, but the wind farm and solar power offers huge opportunities to Northern Ireland. Net zero is the future, reliance on expensive oil and gas is the past. These bills will come down and jobs will grow with the new technologies that we can bring forward.
Sarah Bull.
Question number 5, Mr. Speaker.
The record £18.2 billion funding settlement for 25-26 will provide Northern Ireland with funding in line with its independently assessed level of need, and it is now for the Executive to decide how this funding is spent.
Sir Bull.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Royal College of GPs in Northern Ireland has said that the hike in national insurance contributions will be catastrophic for GP surgeries. So with many practices teetering on the edge, why are the ministers not doing more to support and talk to their colleagues in the Treasury?
Well, I point out to the honourable member that the last government left... Well, no, however much they may deny it, the last government left a fiscal black hole that had to be filled, and the increase in expenditure that resulted from the autumn budget is helping to fund, in part, the record settlement that the Northern Ireland Executive has got for 25-26.
Chair of the Select Committee, Tony Antoniazzi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Northern Ireland Select Committee is soon to publish its first report to the House on the funding of public services, and the issue of revenue raising by the Executive continues to be highlighted. What conversations is he having with the Executive to help deliver longer-term financial sustainability in Northern Ireland?
Well, I have regular discussions with the Executive about the financial situation and their plans. The truth is very simple. All governments around the world, including the Northern Ireland Executive, have choices to make with the resources they've got available as to whether they seek to raise revenue to fund more things, including further investment in health. Those are choices for the Executive to make, but if they don't make those choices, they have less funds than would otherwise be available to them.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Dr Al Pinkerton.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Yesterday, Belfast Chamber, which represents 600 businesses, warned that many Northern Irish businesses are being forced to freeze growth plans, halt recruitment and in some cases cut jobs to absorb rising costs as a consequence of rising employer national insurance contributions, due to take effect in just 4 days. So can I ask the Secretary of State, what impact assessment has the Northern Ireland Office made regarding the impact of those tax rises on SMEs? And also, what practical discussions is the Secretary of State having with the Northern Ireland Executive to support SMEs, which are the future of Northern Ireland's growth?
Well, of course, the increase in employers' national insurance is going to be difficult for some firms. That is clearly the case. But, as I said, the Northern Ireland economy has the fastest rate of growth, growing faster than the rest of the United Kingdom. It has low unemployment. And the rest of questions today has highlighted the huge areas of potential that the Northern Ireland economy has to continue to grow and to create new jobs and new businesses.
Minister Mike Wood.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Northern Ireland Farming Minister estimates that 3/4 of dairy farms in Northern Ireland could be hit by inheritance tax following the Chancellor's disastrous changes. Given the particularly high cost of agricultural land compared to farming incomes in Northern Ireland, does the Secretary of State recognise that the budget is a direct threat to family farms and thousands of livelihoods across Northern Ireland?
Well, I would say that the figures that the Honourable Gentleman has just referred to do not reflect the assessment that the Treasury has made about the number of farms that will be affected, which is based on claims that were submitted in the past. I understand the concern that the farming industry has got, but the Treasury is very clear, one, that it will not hit a majority of farms, and two, we have to do something about very big landowners who buy a lot of land in order to avoid inheritance tax.
Jenny Riddle-Carpenter.
Number 6, please, Mr Speaker. Thank you, Mr Speaker. Public sector reform is a priority for this government, and I very regularly meet with Northern Ireland executive ministers. I very regularly meet with Northern Ireland executive ministers, unions and public service providers. Most recently, the government and executive agreed £129 million of funding for public service transformation for health, special educational needs, justice and wastewater.
Terry Riddle-Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I welcome what the Minister has said about public service reform being a shared challenge. Does she agree with me that it's in the interest of patients and people in Northern Ireland and in England for the Executive and the Government to share knowledge and best practice about what works?
Minister.
I absolutely agree. This issue of public service transformation is not just about funding, it's about how to spend the money that the Northern Ireland Executive has got with the record £18.2 billion settlement. Health is devolved, but we work together to share best practice, expertise, as well as agreeing £61 million of funding recently for multidisciplinary teams in GP surgeries. We need jointly to create an NHS fit for the future and to work together to do that, and I'll be meeting with the Health Minister again in Northern Ireland this week.
Gregory Campbell.
Indeed, Mr Speaker. Any future discussions that she will have with Northern Ireland ministers about the reform of the public sector, will she ensure that it includes the need for many parts of that public sector to ensure that their employment practices and procedures result in workforces that are more broadly representative of the working age population, as the unionist community in many sectors are underrepresented and have been in the public sector for many years?
Minister.
Workforce challenges are a huge part of public service transformation. There are workers across Northern Ireland doing fantastic work in health, in education, in justice, and they need to be supported to do that and to be representative of the community. Those issues about workforce are a devolved issue, but they are important. But supporting our workforce, working with unions as well to do this, is an important part of our working together in an active partnership with the Executive.